Today's tale comes from the ancient Irish tales, and it is the tales of the Tuatha De Danann, and today's tale is the Book of Invasions. Good evening. Today's tale comes from the tales of the Tuatha De Danann, and today's tale is called the Book of Invasions. And yes, it's right from an actual historical book called the Ancient Irish Tales. The Book of Invasions. Let's see what happens. Their narratives assembled under the title Book of Invasions or Occupations are the literary embodiment of Ireland's own impersonations regarding the history of her population. For the early Irish, they served somewhat the same functions as the accounts of wanderings of arenas did for the Romans. To say that some have done that, the Book of Invasions is a collection of Irish mythology, is to give an entirely wrong impression of its contents. Some of the characters, it is true, may have rationalized gods, but the stories as they now stand before rather to pseudo-history than to mythology. For example, Imr, Ibra, and Imon, though represented in a narrative as ancient kings, are, in fact, merely a fictitious personage with the names made up from the ancient name of Ireland spelled in the earliest manuscripts of Iru. Modern students of early Irish history are inclined to see that underlying these obvious fictitious narratives and substratum of fact and regard for account and reflection of general way of historical record of the early population groups, they present a version perceived only in rather late manuscripts, but in ancient origin of at least some parts of a collective supported by comparison with the early forms of British Latin, history of the Britons. The selection presented below are not continuous, but they form a tolerably unified selections describing the arrival of three different groups of immigrants. The first of the divisions here is given preceding the complete text and account of the arrival of the Parthenon and his people. The account of the Tuatha De Danann serves as background for the second battle of Moratoria and the fate of the children of Turin. The conquest of Nude. Now, Ireland was wasted 30 years after the plague brutal of Parthenon's people, till Numan, son of Aragon, son Pomp, son of Tis, son of Sorson, of Susan, of Ursus, son of Boromut, son of Athelsir Morag, etc., of the Greeks of Silcia reached it. Now, the account of Numand, he came from Sicily westward, a rowing in the Caspian Sea, till he reached his wandering the great northern ocean. 34 ships were his number, and 30 in each ship. Whilst they were thus wandering, there appeared to them a golden tower on the sea close by him. Thus was when the sea was ebbed, the tower appeared before it. And when it flowed, it rose above the tower. Nimond went with his great people towards it for greed of the gold. From the greatness of their convacious, for they did not perceive the sea filling around them, so that the eddy took their ships from them. All but a few of their crew were drowned, except those from whom Nimond and his children rescued by dint of rowing. A year and a half after their wandering the sea, till they reached Ireland, they remained in it. Now, as for Nimond, he had 4 chiefs with him: Sarum Imbril, the prophet, Fergus Reidside, and Annan. They were the 4 sons of Numan. Macha was the name of his wife. Meb, Michu, Ubra, and Sira were the names of the wives of the chieftains he had. On the 12th day, after they reached Ireland, the wife of Numan died. She was the first dead in Ireland from among them. 4 lakes burst over Ireland in the time of Numan: Loch Helen, Unnun, Loch Muir of Saragurb, Loch Dorbrach, and Loch Armand of Meath. At the end of 9 years after their coming to Ireland, these last 2 lakes burst forth. 2 royal forts were dug by Numan in Ireland: Rankin-Itch in Ininochen and Rathcomber in Sinin. The 4 sons Madden Fatneck of the Fomorians dug Rathcuran-Itch in 1 day. Boch, Roebuck, Rundon, and Roden were their names, for they were kept in servitude by Numan and their father Madden before he completed the excavation. 12 plains were cleared by the Numan in Ireland, and the servitude likewise, namely Meg Curna and Meg Ebra, and Connacht and Meg Torre, and Tira Egan, Leithric in Minster, Mag in Bernsta in Leinster, Meg Torach in Corach, Mag Luther in Lunturg, Mag Sturrog in Tobruk, Mag Somi in Dalidarna, Mag Nurag in Corach, Mag Ninchin in Conal, and Mag Macha in Agra. Niemand won 3 battles over the Fomorians, namely the Battle of Morbog, the Daligraga, where fell Soron son of Numberg at the hands of Coran son of Felberg, in Least Numberg, Lechmirg in Morag, the Battle of Rostfirsten in Corach, which is called the Battle of Bendga. There fell 2 kings of the Fomorians, namely Gan of Berga, Gan and Sigurd in the Battle of Kennos, and Leinster, where fell a slaughter of men of Ireland. When Borum son of Saran, son of a slaughterman named of Ireland, Nieman by the same Cochan. Moreover, by Nieman were these 3 battles won, though his people suffered great hurt in them. Nieman died afterwards of plague in the island of Arnumad, in Unerston in Munster, and 3,000 with him. Now, there was a great oppression of the children of Numeric after that, since while their champions and their chieftains were kind of destroyed in the aforesaid battles, and since Naaman died, with the number we have mentioned, those at whose hands had suffered oppression were Corvus son of Felber of the Fomorians, and Morag son of Dali, the other chief. The fortress of Corwag at that time was at Torcoran, which is called Taurus Kennan, to the northwest of Ireland. A sheepland was made of Ireland by them, so that not a venture was made to let smoke be seen by day from the house that was in it, except with the constant of the Fomorians. 2/3 of their corn, their milk, and their children, with one other intoxicable burdens to the Fomorians, used to demand. This was given to them, and the men of Ireland had to deliver every item to them, always on Simonius at Mocraran. For this reason is called Macetin. For the frequency they had to pay heavily taxed. The tax will be brought on this occasion. So that sense was the plain named. Now, wrath and rage seized the children of Numan, for the heaviness of their distress and injusticeness of their tax, so that their 3 chieftains plotted to cause their people throughout Ireland to collect and assemble, so that they should arrive at one place. They acted accordingly, and having reached one spot, they resolved on one council. They proceeded to Corin's tower to demand alleviation for their oppression of the Fomorians, or to fight with them. Those were their chieftains: Fergus Reedside, son of Numa; Seaman, son of Ilberic, son of Neman; and Ergen, son of Boron, son of Neman. There were other princes and nobles that assembled besides, with Arthur the Great, son of Neman, and Arma One-Tooth, son of Nemund, etc. 30,000 on sea, and in the same number on land, was the number of children of Nemund who went to that destruction, besides foreigners, restals, and, well, a rabble, which they brought to increase their muster against the oppression of the Fomorians. After they'd reached the shores of Taurus, they made booths and huts about the border of the bay. Then they resolved on the council to send Aram One-Tooth to Corin to ask respite in the matter of tax to the end of 3 years. Amr went and reached the fortress of Conan, and when he heard this speech, Conan was enraged with the martial prince, so that he got no good out of his journey. Amr returned to his people and told them the words of the chief. Downcast were they, that hearing them, they introduced Amr to the pack again and asked respite for a year of Comric to show him their poverty and needed to bear witness to their inability to produce their heavily taxed of that year, and to promise that it should come to him in its fullness at the end of that time. They said to him further, unless he should obtain a remission, he was asking to proclaim battle against the Conan. For they all weighed nigh, preferably fall together in one place, men, women, and boys and girls, than to be under the great distress in which they were any longer. Amma went forward to Cullen and told him the words of the children of Nermund and his presence. They will get the grace, said Conan, on condition that they neither separate nor scatter from one another until the end of that year, so that I and the Fomorians get them in one place for their destruction, unless they pay the tax in full at the end of the grace. Amor returned to his brothers and told them the news, and then accepted it, in the hope that they should send messengers to their brothers to send the original stock to Greece and ask for an army to form against the Fomorians. For Rubu, daughter of the king of Greece, was a mother of 2 of these children, and Neman and Fergus Reedside, and Almer One-Tooth. Simon, son of Ilmros, was king of Greece at that time. When the messengers from Ireland reached Greece, Summa caused the nobles of Greece to come and assemble together in common, so that he brought together an immense host of choice warriors, of druids and druidesses, and of wolves and venomous animals throughout the coasts. He sends them before the children of Numud, and himself joins afterwards with full muster of the Greeks, and they set out to Ireland. The progress of that voyage is not related up to the time they took harbour in Conan's tower. Welcoming were the children of Nurmund to them. That was agreed upon by them after their arrival, to declare war on Corog unless he yield them their freedom. They sent messengers to him about this. Corman was enraged, and after hearing their speech, so that he agreed to give battle. The messengers went back to the people. Colin sent for Morik, son of Del, the other prince of the Fomorians, notwithstanding, a thought inglorious day to delight answering the battle at once, for he felt sure that the children of Nurmund would not be ready to undertake the battle with him on account of the valor and magnitude of his host. Then the men of Ireland sent a spy to the Tower of Corman, namely Uruburu, daughter of the kings of Greece, who came in the host of their children. A druidess was she, and she went in the form of the concubine of Corin to the tower, so that she was with him in the in lover's wise for a while, though the confusion of his mind, battle was begun first between the Druids and another between the Druidesses, so that it went against the Fomorians. In short, every battle which was fought for a while after went against the Fomorians, so that their people were destroyed to a great extent. A wall strong and hard to be pulled down was made by the children of Numan near the tower. After that, at the advice of their spy, they sent a herdful animals of Greece that had brought to their assistance to the tower, so that they breached every quarter and every side of it before them, and the attacking party went on their trail through the ways they made forward to the tower. The mighty men of the tower were not able to remain within it because of the strength and venom of the hurtful strange animals mingled with them. Colan with his war squadrons fled at once, and he thought it was ignoble not to attack the hosts face to face, for he considered it easier to give them battle than to wait in the tower for a wild venomous beast to come through the walls after they had destroyed him. The attacking host after that secured both hounds and venomous swine. After the warriors had left the tower, they had left the guard over it to proceed to the combat. Each of them took his battle duties upon him on this side and that. After they'd been thus fighting together for a while, here's what happened. Coran fell by the hand of Fergus Redseid, son of Numan, in a fair fight. The Fomorian two valiant knightly warriors besides that, Gareth, son of Fibra, the officiant, and the Fomorians closed around them after losing their leader. They took the rising high their warlike efforts and their deeds of valor, till the children of Numan remembered their hostility and their cruelty to them up until then. So Seaman, son of Sarah, and Gressus, son of Ferber, were matched as well as Isbers the officiant. This was the end of it, that the Fomorians were beheaded by the hands of those warriors who happened to march against them. The battle that at last went against the tribe of the Fomorians, and the men of Ireland took to encircling and surrounding them, so that not a fugitive would escape from them. The host proceeded to the tower and took its treasures, its gold, its silver, and all its valuables in general. They put fires in every quarter of it after that, so that not higher was its smoke than its flame. Its women and women's servants, its boys and girls, were burnt, and not a fugitive escaped from it. The children of Numan shared the bounty of the tower among them, the nobles and the great men of the Greeks, before parting from them, and they were grateful towards one another. Now, the children of Numan stayed in the place of conflict after the departure of the Greeks from them, burying those of their nobles who were slain. Not long were they thus when they saw a great fleet approaching them. 70 of ship was the number, teeming with the choice warriors led by Morach, son of Dela, and the other chief of the Fomorians coming up to conquer them. They landed, and their presence of the children of Numan went to hold the harbour against them. Though they were worn out for this war, was resolved not to suffer the Fomorians any longer to frequent Ireland. Howbeit, although the great was, despite hatred, Morach, son of Dala, against the children of Danann before that, it was far from the greatest on that occasion. The hot, desperate battle, that was far the greatest on that occasion between them on every side. Such was the intensity of the fighting and the greatness of mutual hostility that they did not perceive the gigantic wave of the tide filling up every side about them, and there was not a heed in their minds for their battle feats alone, so that the majority were drowned and annihilated, except the people of one ship of the Fomorians and one group of 30 men of the children of Nimrod. The crew of that ship arrived back and told their news to the people, and they were downcast at hearing it. As for the 30 warriors of the children of Danann who had escaped from the destruction, the 3 chieftains that were over them divided Ireland into 3 parts between them after that. These are the chieftains: Borach, son of Andalus, son of Naaman; Seaman, son of Ergun, son of Bursun, son of Saran, son of Norman; the Briton, son of Fergus, Ronson, son of Naaman; and the 3rd Borisfist, the Taurus Boros, to breach Chorus; the 3rd Simon from the Burus to the breach Creus; the 3rd Bursian from breach Chorus to Taurus Kin. However, they did not abide long by that division, throughout separating and scattering into other countries over the sea, for they stood in fear of the Fomorians, lest what remained of them should wreak their resentment upon them after the battles that had been fought between them. Another cause for themselves were not friendly hovering over them. In addition, they were terrified of the plagues by which the troops of their chieftain and of the men had died before the storming of the tower. So, for these causes, they separated one from the other. These are the lands that went: Simon, and with his 9 to the lands of the Greece. He had gone after the death of his father to Ireland. Britain, with his father Fergus Thurst, and Morn Corin Britain in Britain. And thus was the conquest of the Fomors. Now, join me learning the conquest of the Fherborg. Now, Ireland was desert for the space of 200 years after the separation of the 3 groups we have mentioned, till the coming of the race of chiefs groups on it, that is, the Fherborg, of the children of Nimrod by descent, were they. For Sermon, son of Egred, son of Boris, son of Sermon, son of Nimrod, was chief of one of the 3 nonins from the children of Nimrod who went from Ireland after the destruction of Corm's tower, and who landed in Greece. There were there many drivers with their children and families. After they increased thus, the Greeks did not allow them to be with their own young men, but they imposed servitude upon them. This was almost to make cleverly planned in the story rough-headed hills with clay from elsewhere, after bringing it to the places in which they ordered and commanded it to be put. Tired, weary, and desperate were they from this, that the council, discussing amongst themselves the escape from intolerable bondage in which they were, they agreed thereto at length that they made canoes and fair vessels of the skins, and ropes, and bag, and earth, until the sound of the sea. They went in them thereafter, and the quest of fatherland from the ancestors had gone. Their adventures on the sea are not revealed, save only one, that they reached Ireland in 1 week. Different were they from the tribe names that the time came, namely Gerald Fherborg of the Ferdona. Nevertheless, though the various dismember were their names, and mutual friendships was very close, for they were one of the races and one origin. 5 chiefs were over them: Seged, Wurged, Brannan, and Grinin. And Seged and the 5 sons of Dallas, son of Lok, son of Orach, son of Turbert, son of Up, son of Garach, son of Utrach, of Seaman, son of Ergun, son of Naaman, son of Ergun. Now, Gergun was the name of Gulun with his people. Galan truly is Galfin, that is, the 3rd who used to surpass the other 2s in valor and in equipment, so that from the valor Gal they took the name Fherborg. Again is the name of Galan similar with their people. To them the name Fherborg properly belongs, for it is they who carry out the earth in the bags, Borg, verdormen from digging the earth. It was said that this is verdomfun, that is, men who used to deepen, dormerchen, the earth. To reside to graven with his people was the name applied, and was in Inderm that they took the harbour. However, it is correct to call them all Verburg in general, for it is in the bags for carrying the earth that came over the seas to Ireland. And they are one immigration, one race. And principally, though they came in different days and landed at different creeks, these are all creeks. Salar, their chief, Prince Elder, reached the land of Eristherin on Saturday, on Cattles of August, so that far regards the day of the week that the creek took its name, 1,000 men in his number. Sergan and Gerger Urban Disco, a Tuesday they landed, 2,000 in their number. Rogers the Gannon landed in Durham, as we have said, the following Friday, 2,000 in their number. Now, they came together afterwards in Unsis of Mer, and they divided Ireland into 5 parts. The Share Sega first from Ergokopo to Comper, the three waters, of Gallen next from Comber to Brach Cogras, Serum from Brach Cogros to Limerick, Garum from Limerick to Dobrich, Grange from Dobris to Boyne. That is the conquest of the Verburg. Now, in the Book of Invasions, we come to the conquest of the Tuatha de Danann. As for Isbro, son of Boros, son of Eros, son of Nimid, after his leaving Ireland with his people, after the conquest before described, they settled in northern isles of Greece. They were there till numerous were their children and their kindred, that they learned druidry and many various arts of the islands, where they were from the first Morgravers, Kilruch, and every sort gentilism in general, until they were knowing, learned, and very accomplished in the branches thereof. They were called the Tuatha Dei. That is, they considered the men of learning to be the gods and the husbandmen non-gods. So much was their power in every art and in every Druidic occultism besides. Thence came the name which is Tuatha Dei to them. These were the cities where they were being instructed. Phalis, Scoris, Findus, and Miras. They instructed learning in each one of these cities. These are their names. Bonfissa, in Phyllis, Eurus and Goros, Usus and Fidus, and Seamus, who was in Muridus, from Fidus was brought to the stone of Fel, Lefil, with Lu had in Tara. That which is used to scream and number every king who took sovereignty in Ireland, from the time Lu Limfra to the time of the birth of Christ. And it is never screamed thereafter under any king from that out. And it was a demon, that entrance, that powers every idol caused in the name of the birth of the Christian, who was born of the Virgin Mary, yada yada yada, called Innis. From Lefel is called Innisfell, as Carrick Prose having said, the stone on which my heel stands, from it is named Innisfell, between two strands of the mighty flood, Ireland altogether called Macfell. From Gorius was brought the spear that Lu had. No battle was maintained against him who had it in his hand. From Findus was brought the sword of Nadu, none used to escape of who wounded. From Muras was brought the cauldron of the Dagda. No one came from it unsatisfied. After they have completed their learning, they went between them to Athens and Philistines, so that they dwelt between them. Now, there arose battles and conflicts between those races. and they were evil and melancholy disposed of one another. Many battles were fought between them, and it was against the Athenians that battles used to be won until all save a little remnant were exhausted. Then the Tuatha joined in friendship with the Athenians, and they formed, through druidry, demon spirits in the bodies of the soldiers of the Athenians, who were slain, so that they were fit for battle. Thus they used to encounter the Philistines again. The Philistines thought immediately astonished to see the men that they had slain fighting with them the day after. They told that to their druid. Their elder gave them advice, saying, "Take pegs of hazel and of quicken tree to battle on the morrow, and if yours be the victory, thrust the points in the backs and the necks of the men who shall be slain. And if there be demons, heaps of worms will be made of them." They did so. The Philistines were victorious and thrust the pegs in the backs and the necks of the warriors they slew, and while their worms on the morrow. Thence the strength of the Athenians were humbled, and the Philistines were powerful. Then they remembered their hostility and unfriendliness against the Tuatha in a matter of the confederacy that they had made with the Athenians against them. So that this is what they resolved: to assemble, to attack them, to avenge their spite against them. When the Tuatha knew that, they went and fight before the Philistines until they received Palmintry and land in Dobra and Ishkabur north of Alba. 7 years they were in that place. Nudu being prince over them. This was the plan to decide upon by them by the end of that time, to attack Ireland against the Fherborg, as they were prosperous for to go. There was theirs by right of heredity. When they arrived at this resolution, they set out on the sea, and their adventures thereon not related until they took harbour in the coast of Ireland. On Monday on the 1st of May, they burned their boats and ships, in order that the Fomorians should not be able to use them against them, and further in order that they themselves should not have them to flee therein from Ireland. If it was against them the Fherborg should be victorious, then they make a great darkness around them, until they reached the mountain of Carabrin in Corach, without the Fherborg perceiving it. Then they demanded battle, or the kinship of their kinsmen the Fherborg. In consequence was fought the battle of Melktorg and Corach Cormans and Corach Toror of Corach. He who was the king of the Fherborg then was Ertus, son of Irk. Tiltu, daughter of Magmor, king of Spain, was wife of Irkuk, and Nudu, son of Er, was king over the Tuatha. They were a long time fighting that battle. It was won at last. The Fherborg was present northwards, and 1,100 were slaughtered from Melktorg to the strand of Erko Udu, son of Erg, the first men who fell in Ireland of the Tuatha by the hand of Nirkon, grandson of Simon. The Tuatha were pressuring and pressing upon the Fherborg until they came upon King Elkrud, son of Eric, in the place we have mentioned, so that he fell at the hands of the 3 sons of Nubr, son of Bandri, namely Karsad, Lumen, and Lurkur. Even the Tuatha were slain and cut off to a great extent, and in joining the battle before their king Nuru, had his arms hewn off his shoulder. Afterwards, Daughter the Leech and Korog the Bazaar made for him a silver arm, which vitality in every finger and every joint in it, but Mitch, son of Dorog, lopped off the silver arm. After a while, they put a joint to joint, sinew to sinew, and healed it in thrice 9 days. And Dorog his father was envious of him, For this cause the king used to be called Nodbu, Silver Arm. As for Tiltu, daughter of Magor, king of Spain, wife of Error, son of Erra, queen of the Fairborg, she waited Ertrud, the ruse son of Dalla the Blind in the Tuatha Day, and Tiltu came afterward, the fighting of the battle of Mortog, to Corum Corric, Coolin's wood. The wood was cleared at her command, so that it was Cloverly Plain at the end of the year. She inhabited it afterwards. And Corazon of Dersa, Skill the Dumb, is another name for that Karen, gave his son named Lu, son of Error, daughter of Balor, to Taltuf for fosterage. And she desired for her foster mother and her friends from that she should name the place that was cleared by her, that she should be buried there after death. Then Tiltu was buried, so that it is her grave northwestwards, an assembling place until to her mourning games used to perform each year, by Lu and the kings after him. A fortnight before Lunasa, and a fortnight after, they used to hold continually. Lunasa, named after Lu, is assembly or festival in the commemoration of the memorial of a death. Now, the Fairborg were all slaughtered in that battle, as we have said, save a few, and those of them who survived fled before the Tuatha Day into the outermost isles and the islets of the sea, so that they dwelt in them thereafter. Thus ends the Book of Invasions. Join me tomorrow when we still tell the tales of the Tuatha Day, but this time the second Battle of Mortoria.